Hi everyone, it's Plastic EP here, and I've got a special guest from Los Angeles, Steve Stanley. Welcome, Steve, and I'm here in Australia.
Great to see you. So it's like 5 hours ago tomorrow where you are, right? What time is it?
Yeah, we're one day ahead, Steve.
Yeah.
And it's been quite cold here, and most of these bushfires and what's happened, it's sort of like going towards winter.
You're
so
heading
now it's
right now, right?
Yeah, we're getting into winter. And now most people in Australia are isolated in their houses. And that's one reason why we do this interview, so they can meet people like you and learn a little bit more about what you do. I know you've got your own radio show. I know you design albums. Tell me about yourself.
Well, let's see. Where do we begin? I've got the radio show that you mentioned. It's called The Now Sounds, and like my reissue label, and it's on luxuriamusic.com every Monday, 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, in case anyone would like to listen. And we're sort of on a bit of a hiatus right now because we're all quarantined, as you guys are down there.
Yep.
So I've been doing the show since September of 2006. And just basically I play whatever I want to play, stuff I put out on my label, stuff I just have recently found, things I'd like to possibly reissue one day, stuff people have turned me on to. It's just a really, it's a fun excursion that I do every week, so I like it.
Personally, your own type of music, I'm just saying, what sort of music are you really into yourself personally?
Personally, I love music from all eras. The 20s, I've been really sort of hooked on a lot of 20s music lately. The big band era, I grew up with that. Glenn Miller and Tommy Dorsey and all that kind of stuff as a kid. The 50s music I got hooked on through my mother and her record collection. Also 60s stuff that she had laying around. You know, I was a child in the 70s and the 80s, so I absorbed a lot of that music as well. So pretty much everything is game for me.
And the British invasion, you're a big fan of that like me?
Oh, of course.
Right, that's great. And who's your favorite out of it's got to be the Beatles. What, Beatles, Kinks?
It has to be. I mean, the Beatles, there's just, it's the beginning and the end. I mean, it's unparalleled music. Is it even worth even mentioning that? It's so obvious, but it's still.
I know, but a lot of people have got different tastes. Believe me, like my generation, myself personally, I was too young for the Beatles. I was like 6 years old in 1964. So my group and age, here I am in 1967 in Melbourne, Australia, and the Monkees have started in the US in 1966, but we're isolated here, away from everybody, not even knowing what's happening in the US, because we're 6 months behind the US, and the only way we were able to find out about music was through the print press, the newspapers.
Right.
And even with the Monkees, I got to tell you the story. When Peter left the band, right, like after the Head and the 33 and a third special, he left the band. But here in Australia, quite frankly, we didn't know that he left the band. Like, that's how hard it is getting the news from what's happening in the States. Like, he may have left the band, and 6 months later, we find out he's left the Monkees. Like, that's how it is here.
It's a little slow getting down there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But now,
down there that you could sort of like get into as well. What were some of your favorite local bands that you grew up with?
Well, I've got to tell you now, Daddy Cool. Tell me if you heard of these bands. Have you heard of Daddy Cool?
Yes.
Okay. Have you heard of Skyhooks?
Yeah, I don't have anything by them, but I've heard of them.
Okay, they're really good. Then also, have you heard of Sherbet?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll mention a few names, which is really good. Okay, my favorite writing songs myself personally and being in a band, my biggest influence Australia-wise, like an Australian band, is the Angels. Have you heard of the Angels? And I think they had a different name in the US.
Right.
They had big hits with No Secrets, things like that. Are you up to date with them?
Yeah, I should get more of their stuff, but yeah, it's amazing stuff.
They've actually got a 3 CD set out now, and it's just fantastic, Steve. Right?
Okay,
It's like the Angels recordings. And as you know, AC/DC, right? They made it very, very big.
certainly did.
But
Yes.
what happens with the Angels, they were basically with Albert Productions under the same production company as AC/DC,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
But then they broke away and AC/DC went their way and the Angels went their own way.
Hmm.
But over time, the songs of the Angels, I don't know, it's just like they're timeless. Like at the time when they came out, it was great. But over this period of time, you realize, hey, that's actually fantastic songs and intricate songs and like in your face songs. And
Sure.
like it's grown over me over this period of time where the Angels might have been like my third best band, right? But they've just plowed right through. And to me, I can't compare them to AC/DC. AC/DC is AC/DC and even more successful. But as far as a band that's got an influence on me, I go with the Angels.
Okay. Well, I'll look out for that set. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very good. And I'm going to ask you, with yourself growing up, right, what's your time period? Like you said 70s, or obviously, what when you were growing up and you understood music for the first time, what was the band that was the first band that you said, this is my band?
Well, growing up in Oklahoma City in the 70s and into like actually I moved out to Los Angeles in 1980. We didn't have a lot of record stores, or I was just not aware of really where to go and find great music. We had a drugstore up the street from us, and they would sell a lot of cutout records. And so it was there where I discovered like Elvis and Buddy Holly. That was sort of big. There were reissues that were starting to come out, and my mother's record collection also was very very um, eye opening for me because she had so much stuff from the 50s and the 60s. You know, Herman's Hermits and like Dave Clark Five, the Beatles, the Beach Boys, all that kind of stuff. And I sort of absorbed her her time frame of growing up in the 70s because I was just so blown away by what had happened right before I came around. So I sort of like even from a very early age felt like I had missed the golden era of music. So I kind of lived vicariously through the record collections of my mother.
I totally understand. It's like, for example, the Monkees, they did the TV show for 2 years, did
Hmm.
58 episodes, and then their show went into reruns. Then even their vinyl records disappeared. And then they were reissued later, and the big Monkees revival happened in 1986 when MTV played the 58 episode or 56 episodes non-stop. And it just, they went back then on tour, Mickey, Mike, and Davey, and they were like the biggest act, filling amusement parks, and Monkey Mania had just come back. And then their records were reissued and they came back. Now, I've got to ask you, you design a lot of CDs and covers, and I take it vinyl as well, yeah?
Yes, yes. Speaking of the Monkees, like one of my earliest musical memories is, you know, watching their TV show on a little TG&Y black and white TV set that I won in a school raffle, actually.
That's
And
great.
just remember watching that show and listening to that first record. My mother had their first record and just so transfixed by it. And I don't think I would have ever been able to have imagined working on reissues of that music 30 years later, you know, but it happened.
And also, I'm just saying, writing songs like I do, my biggest influences have been Boyce and Hart and Mike Nesmith. Now, Boyce and Hart, as you know, they developed the Monkees' early sound and produced the first album.
Hmm.
But with the Boyce and Hart, they did the theme song to Where the Action Is. And I believe that you did the box set for Where the Action Is. That's correct?
Yeah, I art directed it, and Mark London, a friend of mine, did the front cover, and I worked on all the other elements of the package, the discs, the booklet, the back cover, that sort of thing. So, and Andrew put together a really great track selection for that package. It's one of the last of the great sort of cross-licensed various artist releases to come out in the sort of classic Rhino sense, which is, I wish there was more of that, you know, but it was really a fun package to work on.
Well, I'm just saying, with the Monkeys product that's come out now, the deluxe boxes, like, they're brilliant. And I know that there's a lot of work that goes into these projects. People out there, I'll be honest with you, they take it for granted. They just buy it, but they wouldn't understand the amount of work that goes into producing something or reproducing something better than what it was, with booklets, with magazines, with pictures. I mean, that all takes time and research that people don't realize. And that's why yourself, you're in the position to know. I mean, there must be endless hours to do a project, even, for example, Where the Action Is box set.
Well, I mean, it was a lot of time and energy put on my part. I can only imagine how much time, you know, the producer put into that, and collectively hundreds of hours put into that. The licensing coordinator, mastering, you know, there's so much that goes into any release. I actually think of every release as being a mini miracle, but that particular package was a series of miracles because of all of the hurdles, political hurdles, logistical hurdles. It is very complicated, and I think a lot of people, consumers of music, aren't really, and they shouldn't really be. It wouldn't make sense. They wouldn't be aware of all the nuances that go into putting something like that together. So thank you for bringing that up, because it is something that people should know about.
Well, could I ask you how many CDs that box set is? I haven't seen it as yet, but I'll look for it here in Australia or look for it on the net.
It's a 4-disc set.
Yep.
4 discs, yeah. Primarily bands that were active in Southern California, you know, during that time frame. Studio groups that weren't necessarily live performing acts represent one of the discs. Yeah, it's a wonderful collection.
Now, I just want to say, did you do some work on the Cowcells? Any of their reissues?
For my label, Now Sounds, we put out 3 or 4 Cowcells albums, reissues. We did the first album in mono. It had never been available in mono on CD before. So we did the first album in mono, got the original master tapes, sourced the tapes. We also included bonus tracks, contemporaneous singles that weren't on the album, but that sort of fleshed out the story of that particular release. We did On My Side, the London album that came out in, I think, 1971. That had never been on CD before. Captain Sad, we reissued that album. I wanted to do Weekend Fly, but so there was some sort of legal problem with that, so we weren't able to put that one together. But I'm still working on trying to make that happen.
That's great, Steve. I just want to say, as I said, the amount of work that you do doing things. Now, if they want to look at what you've actually, where to buy these, and you've got your own label too, where's the best place they should go to buy these items?
Nowsounds.co.uk. It's a subsidiary of Cherry Red Records. And unfortunately, a lot of our older titles are out of print right now. But if you go to Discogs or other online dealers, you can find copies out there. They're not impossible to find. We've put out 57 albums, which is kind of hard to believe. We've, over the span of about, I guess, 10 or 12 years, put out the catalog of Paul Revere and the Raiders. We've worked on the Critters, the Association. We put out most of the Association's core catalog, including a complete singles set. Paul Williams, we put out the Someday Man album, and Roger Nichols, we put out an album from Roger Nichols. Dion, Del Shannon, Bobby Fuller 4 is our most recent release. Andrew Sandoval and I worked on that collection together. That was really a lot of fun. I used to work at Delphi Records in the 90s. So I got to know Bobby's producer, Bob Keane, and he sort of gave me one of my first jobs in the music industry. So it's almost like this kind of come full circle for me to actually reissue an album that I would have worked on possibly in the beginning of my career in the music business. So I had a lot of gratitude, for
You know what,
all the
Steve?
experiences I've had.
In time to come, in the future, all the work that you've done yourself and Andrew Sandoval, the buyers of today, that we've got new buyers coming all the time, new generations of fans of these bands that didn't know anything about them. And this is one reason why I'm here. And everything you mentioned today, you're spot on. And I just can't thank you enough for coming on and discussing what you actually do. And it's been a buzz for me to talk to you today.
Likewise, same for me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve. And I'm sure we'll talk again. So from me, it's goodbye from Plastic EP and goodbye from
Steve Stanley.
Okay. Thanks, Steve.